one of the things which I'm very often asked on occasions like this is how I became a Shavian. Well, not to make a long story even longer, I had the good luck, I see now retrospectively, to be born in a slum in the East End of London. A well-known beauty spot, known even among Cockneys as a proper roughhole, known as Shoreditch. And when I was first sent to the local council school, when they discovered that I was instinctively left-handed, they started to beat me, to try and force me to write with my right hand. And when I, as a cocky kid, as you can imagine I was, had the impudence to ask why it was necessary for everybody to write with their right hands, of course they beat me more, because they couldn't think of an answer. And so I started not going. And I suppose because I was such a troublesome and truculent child, they never told my parents I wasn't going. So for weeks, months on end, I never went near the place. I would leave the house at the required time in the morning and trudge off, but then wander about in all sorts of other areas and districts of London. Got myself a bloody sight better education than I would at that wretched school, because London weather being what it was, and still is, I had to take refuge in such places as the public libraries and the art galleries and the museums. And then, when it came time, I won't say to stop going to school, but to stop not going to school, I was 14, that was the required age in those days, and I got a job. First person in our whole district to have a job. I got a job as an errand boy, delivering parcels on a bicycle, largely because I knew about all these various districts of London. I knew that Limehouse was nowhere near Ponder's End, and so I was invaluable as an errand boy. And one fine day, riding through Bloomsbury to deliver one of my little samples of glass bottles and jars, which is what I did, I saw a poster on a hoarding which announced next Thursday, public performances by graduating students of the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. 2 p.m. admission free. Well, I'd never seen a play, I'd never been to a pucker theatre, but I had heard about this Royal Academy of Dramatic Art because just at that time the great actor Charles Laughton had been very much in the news. And I'd learned that he'd been trained on a scholarship at this Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. So I thought, well, if I go along there, I shall see a whole lot of budding Charles Laughtons. So along I went, next Thursday, 2 p.m., admission free. And with all that shy, bashful modesty which characterizes Cockney kids of 15, I thought they were terrible. I said to myself, go stroke, I can do better than that without getting off my bike. As you will perceive, I had in those days a Cockney accent that you couldn't cut with a knife. And so I, in my bottomless ignorance, if I'd had the smallest conception of what I'd been attempting, of course I never would have dreamed of it. But I wrote off to the Royal Academy in my most elegant literary style, and I said something like, look here, what about this here scholarship, which of what you give out? I would like to have it. Well, they courteously replied in due time, and they said, well, yes, there is a scholarship, which is awarded annually to a deserving student, but you must be prepared to find that there are probably something like 200 other young students who would also like to have it. However, if you wish to compete, here are a list of pieces from which you must choose 2 for your audition. Well, they're all classical things. I'd never heard of most of them. One of them happened to be a passage from Shaw's St. Joan, and I was drawn to that because it was that terrible, tragic speech made by the poor chap who comes on after she's been burnt and relates how he was responsible for it. Well, to make a long story even longer, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art gave me their scholarship. And I soon discovered that among our Board of Governors was the great George Bernard Shaw. And unlike most of our Board of Governors, he came quite frequently to the Royal Academy. Not only to see performances, but very often to see rehearsals of plays, if we were doing one of his. And I always remember his coming to a rehearsal of Androcles and the Lion, in which I was lucky enough to be playing the lion. And there, in the grubby rehearsal room, He lay on the floor on his back in his gorgeously tailored tweed suit, waving his arms and legs in the air to show me how I should behave as a lion when he wants his tummy tickled. Well, that was the first of many encounters that I had with GBS, which perhaps another day, when we have more time, I'll be able to tell you about. But of course, time went by, and eventually I was able, a good many years later, to go to his funeral. That was how much a Shavian I was by 1950. And I shall never forget how wonderfully moving it was at Golders Green to hear Sidney Cockerell, his old friend, read that final passage from the Pilgrim's Progress, which ends with, "My sword I leave to him that shall succeed me in my pilgrimage, and my courage and skill to him that can get it." And so he passed over, and all the trumpets sounded for him on the other side. We're all united in sounding more and more trumpets for him on this side. Welcome.